This is Duke University.
Hello and welcome to EGNP's First and Third series. I am Angela Bonner, Associate Director here in the Duke Career Center. And so we're so happy to have Kate Ferguson here with us today. She serves as a criminal defense attorney at the Bronx Defenders office, and she is a proud Duke alum. And we're just gonna kind of jump into some questions. Kate, how are you this morning?
Good. How are you?
I'm good, good. Thanks so much for hopping on and shedding some insight with our students here at Duke. So if you could, we're just gonna start off, if you could just tell me a little bit about your background and how your major has helped you thus far.
Yeah, so when I went to Duke, I double majored in public policy and political science. And then I attended law school at Columbia. And my major was really, really helpful in law school because for a lot of legal analysis, it's important to understand kind of the policy goals. Why did the drafters of the law write it that way? What were they trying to achieve? And so having the background in public policy really helped. It also is a really well-rounded major that requires you to take a little bit of everything. And in particular focuses on communication skills, which are really essential both in law school and beyond in a career as a lawyer. So it really helped me become a better writer, a better public speaker, and set me up well for success.
Awesome. So can you just go a little bit more? I told students where you're working, but just tell us a little bit about what you do and where you work and what your day-to-day looks like.
Yes, so I'm a public defender. I work in criminal defense now at the Bronx Defenders. So we represent people accused of crimes in the Bronx area who can't afford representation. So in terms of what my day-to-day looks like, I'm in court almost every single day, either having just general appearances, checking in, filing motions, arguing motions. And then I've done one jury trial this year. So, if things go to trial, I do that as well. When I'm not in court, you're building up the case, you're investigating the case. At the Bronx Defenders, we practice integrated defense, which means we have people who represent people in family court, civil court, immigration court. So you're working with advocates from all those different areas to really address all your clients' needs. For instance, a criminal case could mean that they are having issues with their housing benefits. So you work with their housing attorney to make sure that they can maintain that housing. And you work with their immigration attorney to make sure that any disposition in the criminal case doesn't lead to them losing their immigration status or getting deported. So that's a lot of my time too, is kind of working with those different advocates to get the best outcomes possible for each of my clients.
Wow. Wow, you do a lot of good work. So could you tell me what you like the best about your job and what you like the least about your job?
So what I like the best about my job is that I can see the direct impact of what I'm doing every day. When you're doing direct services for clients, you can see the results when you get a good result, right? I won that jury trial. You can see how excited your client is, how that can really change someone's life. And that is incredibly fulfilling for me. In terms of what I like the least about my job is when you're a public defender, you're representing a particular client. And so when you're doing that, sometimes from all the different actors involved that you're interacting with, you might hear things you disagree with. You might have to kind of just swallow it and persevere in order to get the best result for your client, which can be very difficult, but it's about divorcing kind of your own personal opinions, what you would say if a friend said that to you versus trying to get the best result for your client. And so I think that's probably the hardest thing about my job for me.
Wow. And just kind of to piggyback on that, because you talked about, sometimes you don't necessarily agree. How do you keep yourself separated and in the mindset to be able to continue to do what you need to do?
Yeah, it's definitely something that I think you get better at over time. And also, you just build up a thick skin. As a public defender, you have to build up a pretty thick skin because kind of everybody in the system can be mad at you. The judge can be mad at you. Opposing counsel can be mad at you. Your own client can be mad at you. So you just kind of have to, you get used to it over time, and also just maintain focus on what your end goal is for any particular appearance or interaction. So I'm just always kind of thinking, how do I use this for my advantage to kind of get what I actually want and the result I actually want for my client?
Thank you for sharing that, because sometimes our students have, trouble right now trying to figure out how to separate themselves from things. So thank you for sharing that. So if you could tell us your first job that you had out of college, and how has that experience helped you in your journey thus far?
So my very first job, because I went straight through from college to law school, was at a big law firm, doing just private practice, general commercial litigation out of law school. And that was a really invaluable experience for me personally, because working at a big law firm like that, you get a lot of opportunities to kind of grow as an attorney. It really was kind of just a boot camp about how to be a good lawyer. And then I also think there's a particular mindset when you're working for these big corporations, big clients who are paying a lot of money for your time. The focus is really on not just, kind of a good enough product, but a perfect work product for them. And so that really built good habits for me in terms of trying to make the work product as good as possible, having really good attention to detail. And so it really set me up for success kind of as I've moved to something totally different. And I use kind of the skills I learned in that first job every day.
Okay, wow. So now that we are talking about this, but I do want to double back. I had another question for you. There's always this debate and the decision of, should I go straight through to law school or should I take a break?
Yeah.
So what advice would you give on that? Because I know it depends on person and situations and the space in which somebody wants to work. So what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah. So what I will say is, no matter when you're going to law school, it has to be because you really, really want to be a lawyer and you have a very specific goal in mind. Because when I was in law school, you see a lot of people who decide to go because they just don't know what they're going to do next. And it doesn't hurt to go to law school. Like, you have a lot of opportunities. And those are the people who a lot of times end up not being lawyers, end up doing something totally different. So I'd say whether you're going straight through or you're taking time, you have to be really sure. And so for that reason, I think if you're on the fence, it can help to take a year or two and potentially work in the industries you're thinking that you want to end up in after law school. That can help because you're making connections, of course, but it's more just deciding, is this something I really want to do? At the Bronx Defenders, it's really common. We have investigators who are a lot of times college grads who are working in public defense to see, like, do I really want to be a lawyer? Is this something I really want to do? And a lot of them end up going to law school after doing that job for a year or two. So I'd say if you're on the fence, take a year or two to be really sure, because it's a lot of money and it's 3 years of your life. So you want to be really sure. But if you go into it kind of knowing that's what you want to do, like I went to undergrad knowing I wanted to be a lawyer, that was always my focus. And so going straight through was helpful just because you get your career started 3 years earlier, right? And so you have more experience. But I think it really just depends on the person and how confident you are in your decision to go to law school.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. So let's talk about the first time you made a mistake. This wouldn't be the EGNP first and third without a first and a third question. So could you talk about the first time you made a mistake or a challenge that you faced in your career, and how did you work through that?
So I think the first biggest challenge for me, to be frank, was trying to transition from working at a big law firm, which is where I started, to public defense, which is something very, very different. And it's not a common transition, I would say. A lot of times public defense organizations can be a little skeptical of people coming from private practice about whether or not they'll be a good fit for the work, if they'll be able to do it. In terms of how I faced that, I did a couple of different things. First, I networked kind of aggressively. When you're making big jumps like this, you can't really have a lot of shame. So I would reach out via LinkedIn to people at the offices I was applying to, just like kind of cold reaching out, and a surprising number of people will talk to you, right? Using my connections from law school and just trying to talk to as many people as possible when making that transition, kind of making as many connections as possible. And also being open to applying to a lot of different places. I think when you're making a big career transition like that, a lot of people want to land on the perfect job, but sometimes your first job isn't always the perfect job, right? You might have to take, a job just to get your foot in the door. So, I applied really, really broadly. And so I ended up doing family defense at a different organization, which I really enjoyed. But if you'd asked me, I wouldn't have said that's what I wanted to do. It's just in the process, when I met with people, interviewed, I really enjoyed it. And it really worked for me. So I used a couple of different things to kind of overcome that challenge and make the transition.
And I really like that you talked about networking too, because that's also a big thing we push here to get students, just to talk to people, because there's some things, like you said, you never thought you'd be there, but you got there and got a great experience out of it. So thank you for seconding that.
Yes. And I just want to say, I think it's honestly harder for women and people of color to make those kind of networks, because, for instance, I didn't have any lawyers in my family. I don't have anybody with those kind of connections, and you can be really nervous about reaching out. I know I was, but it's one of those things where you just have to do it, because, that's how other people are kind of making connections. And so I just want to encourage people to do it. I know it feels really awkward. It's really uncomfortable, but it also really works. And so you just kind of have to put yourself out there and be a little uncomfortable.
Yes, and I will throw the shameless plug out there for students. We have a whole networking guide on the website. So hop on the website and get that information. So let's talk about the third thing. So what is the third job or internship that you had, and what was your biggest takeaway from that?
So that would be my first internship in law school. And I worked for this very small firm doing aviation defense. And the reason I took that job was because it was my first summer from law school. A lot of firms don't hire first years, and I frankly just really needed the money. I needed to get paid for that summer. And so they hired me. What I took from that were a couple of different things. First, it really set me up when I transitioned to a bigger law firm to kind of get used to that environment. But I think it also is where I first kind of learned, the internship might not be the perfect internship. It might not be your dream internship. It's setting you up for the next internship, which is setting you up for your end goal. And so just to think kind of long term, careers are long, right? You are working for 30, 40 years. And so your first job or your first internship isn't likely to be your forever job or your forever internship. And so it's okay if you're doing something that it's like not your end goal in life to do for your first or your second or your third internship. It's all kind of stepping stones to your ultimate goal. So I think I learned that as well.
You are dropping some good nuggets today, I will tell you. Thank you. So one of the things that I like to make sure that I have conversations with students about are professional organizations and how important it is to start getting involved as a student. So if you could share any professional organizations that you're a part of or you would recommend for students to start looking into.
Yeah. So, I mean, the biggest professional organization I'm part of right now is my workplace is unionized. So I'm in the union. I was a representative a couple of years ago. Now I'm not. And I would definitely encourage students to think about that. The interesting thing is, I think, especially as an undergrad, I would never think I would work in a unionized workplace because you don't think of more classically white collar jobs as places that could be unionized. But now I think in particular, there's kind of a movement. So I would definitely encourage students to think about that. Organized labor is really important. It's how you kind of consolidate power. In terms of other professional organizations, as a lawyer, there's a lot of kind of bar associations that you can become a member of. So there's particular criminal defense, bar organizations. There are organizations for women and people of color. And I definitely think you want to kind of join those and connect as much as possible. If you are going to law school and end up in law school, there are a lot of those types of affinity groups that I think are really important. Because in particular, when you're thinking about these professions, like the legal profession is dominated by old white men, right? And so it's really important that you're building communities early on to kind of help you succeed in a profession that doesn't necessarily look like you, right? And so having those friends kind of long term who can help you, be sounding boards for advice, who have similar experiences trying to make headway in that type of career, I think is really helpful. So that's the other organization that I think students should think about.
Thank you. Take notes, students. Right. Our last question for you is, what piece of advice would you have given yourself when you accepted your first job or while in your role in your first job?
So I think what I would tell myself back then is that the professional world is a lot smaller than you think, and you never know where people end up. You know, I graduated from law school almost 10 years ago now. And so it's very interesting to see where all the people I went to law school with ended up at very different places than you would have guessed. And you really start your professional reputation with your first job, right? And you never know who that person you're interacting with. They could be someone that's working at your dream job or dream organization, or it could be a really important connection for you in 6 or 7 years. And you want them to have a good memory of you, right? A good impression. And so it's really important, even though it's just your first job, to always act like the people you're interacting with, the people you're working with and for, like they someday could be really essential to your career, even if you don't think right at that moment they are. Because you just never know. And your professional reputation is, you know, kind of the most important thing that you have above everything else, and will really kind of help you further along in your career.
This has been a great interview. Thank you. Thank you so much. I think a lot of the things that we try to reinforce with students, you were hitting everything on the head. So I appreciate it. Students, just, you know, hopefully you take something from this. And networking, it's okay. Don't be scared. Just get out there and go.
Yeah.
If you, nothing else from this. But Kate, thank you so much for joining us today, and giving a little bit of your busy schedule and your time with us. And hopefully we can be in contact soon. And are you on LinkedIn? Can students contact you on LinkedIn?
I am on LinkedIn, and students can absolutely contact me. Maybe this is like their soft intro to networking. Try to reach out to someone that they know is open to it first to practice.
Yes, awesome. Well, thank you so much. And you have an amazing day.
Thanks, you too.